now call the November 7th, 2017 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch? The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse the absence of Mayor Humphrey.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Council meetings are televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the October 17th, 2017 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on October 27th, 2017.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Huckabee, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Corrections? Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the November 7th, 2017 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Powell. Abstentions? Please cast your vote. Bob. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
So now we move on to our bright spots in our community. Tonight we will be acknowledging Apprenticeship Week, and I believe Mary Thompson, the director of the Casper Workforce Center, is here to tell us a little bit more about this. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Mary Thompson. I work for Department of Workforce Services, and I'm just here to thank you guys, thank the mayor, the chairman, and all the council members for honoring Wyoming apprenticeship programs by signing this proclamation. I'd also like to thank all of the sponsors who offer apprenticeship programs here in our community for all of their hard work in training Wyoming workers in needed professional skill sets and working to inform workers of tomorrow of these apprenticeship opportunities. Lastly, I'd like to thank all of the apprentices themselves, who we have a few here, for participating in the programs and working diligently to learn and become the skilled workforce of tomorrow. Department of Workforce Services is proud to continue working with the apprenticeship programs and each of you to continue building a better workforce. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I will now read a proclamation, and I'll have you come up after I read it, and I will present it to you. So whereas this year will mark the 80th anniversary of the passage of the National Apprenticeship Act, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt on August 16, 1937, which established a comprehensive system of partnerships among employers, labor, educational institutions, and federal and state government, which has shaped skill training for succeeding generations of workers. And whereas for 80 years, the apprenticeship system has continually developed innovative training approaches to meet the workforce needs of industry to address the evolving challenges of the staying competitive in today's and tomorrow's global economy. And whereas apprenticeship is an important post-secondary pathway for Casper workers, offering a combination of academic and technical instructions with paid on-the-job training, resulting in a nationally and an industry-recognized occupational credential that ensures higher earnings for apprentices and highly skilled workforce for Casper employers, associations, and unions. And whereas in Casper, there are 10 sponsors, employers, associations, unions, offering apprenticeship training in 15 occupations to 160 apprentices registered with the National Apprenticeship System. And whereas the celebration of Casper Apprenticeship Week honors and encourages industries who utilize or could benefit from the apprenticeship model to train Casper workers. Now, therefore, I, Kenny Humphrey, Mayor of the City of Casper, do hereby proclaim November 13 to the 17th, 2017, as Casper Apprenticeship Week, and recognize the role the apprenticeship system has played in preparing workers for sustainable careers with family-sustaining wages. Do you want to come up? Appreciate that. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you again for all your work and all the work that I know through what I do through Gear Up over at the college. Post-secondary education, apprenticeship, that type of stuff is very, very important. So thank you. So moving along, please read the consent agenda titles.
Establishing November 21st, 2017 as the public hearing date for consideration of the following 4 items. An ordinance to vacate a portion of South Spruce Street between East 14th and 15th Streets located in the area subdivision of City of Casper, Wyoming. The consideration of an amendment to the fiscal year 2017-2018 annual appropriation. The consideration of new bar and grill liquor license number 9 for Moreno and Moreno LLC doing business as Guadalajara Family Mexican Restaurant located at 3350 CY Avenue. And the consideration of new resort liquor license number 6 for the City of Casper doing business as Hogadon Basin Ski Area located at 2500 West Hogadon Road.
The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Powell. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision to deny a requested zone change of lots 1 through 4, Thomas D. Ross number addition, located on 802-808 North Washington Street from R3 1 to 4 unit residential to C2 general business. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. Exhibit number 1 is correspondence from Liz Becker to Carter Napier dated October 30th of 2017. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Star Tribune on September 18th of 2017. Exhibit 3 are the exhibits introduced at the August 17th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, consisting of exhibits A through E. Exhibit A was a zone change application. Exhibit B was the map of the 300-foot notification zone. Exhibit C is the legal notice sent to the Star Tribune advertising the date of the public hearing. Exhibit D was the notice of public hearing sent to property owners within the 300-foot radius. And Exhibit E was the memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And finally, Exhibit 4 is the appeal request from Becky Bulford to Craig Collins, Casper City Planner, dated August 18th of this year.
Thank you. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. The question before you this evening is whether or not you would support the decision that the Planning Commission made to deny this request for a zoning change, as was discussed in the reading of the title. With respect to the exhibit that you have in front of you here, the subject property is outlined in the blue line that you see on the map, if you will. The fence in question was constructed along the blue line that is the southernmost border, if you will, of the property in question, and constitutes the basic difficulty that the Planning Commission had with regard to this request for a rezoning of the property in question. The idea is that in order to accommodate the construction of the fence, which is a 6-foot fence, vision blocking, if you will, between the two properties, is appropriate for the request to rezone the property in order to accommodate that construction. The Planning Commission found that indeed this would constitute a spot zoning request, if you will, and also concluded that the support of the construction of the fence is not adequate reasoning for a spot rezoning of this nature either. So staff's recommendation is to support the Planning Commission's denial of this request. Your discussion, however, and consideration this evening would be whether or not the conclusion on the Planning Commission's part was appropriate and should be overturned or not.
Thank you so much. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to only 5 minutes, and please note duplication of speakers will be allowed. So at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of changing the zoning from R3 to a C2, please approach the lectern. Those in favor. Yeah. How are you, Becky?
Doing better if you vote for me tonight. So anyway, I've been trying to get this fence issue taken care of. I'll show you a picture. So the townhouses I own are right back here. The Ranch Motel is here. Sorry I don't have better pictures. I was told to, oh, I don't know. Anyway, I was told the city planning guy would be here.
Actually, Becky, if you want to just give it to our city manager, he'll put it up on the screen for you.
Well, let me point a few things out here. Anyway, this is the fence in question. The Ranch Motel, if you're familiar with it, is on this side, and then the interstate, I-25, runs along there. So there you go. I'll let you pass that around. Oh, I see. You're going to put it up there. All right. Okay, so I've owned these townhouses for, since the 80s. Didn't have any problem renting anything out, but in recent years, with all the economic changes and everything happening, all of a sudden it was like I couldn't rent these things out. And the door on the end of the one townhouse farthest south next to the fence faces south. So when you walk out your front door, you see the Ranch Motel and the interstate. And so one day I walked out, I had trouble renting this place for I don't know how long. I just could not get it rented out. One day I was over there working and I walked out and I thought, why don't I just put a fence up here? It would solve my problems. It would be a privacy for the tenants when they come out. They feel more safe. Because if you've ever been down there, you can see there's all sorts of junk. There's cars without licenses. The noise from the interstate, I can tell you from personal experience since I lived in that end unit about 30 years ago myself. So I can tell you there's lots of noise from the highway along there. And so anyway, I put the fence up and within a week I had it rented out. It was great. And then all of a sudden I heard from the city that I guess I couldn't have my fence up. Apparently my property is R3 residential and the motel is C2, which is commercial. So if you'll see at the end where my fence just goes straight across, apparently if you're in a residential neighborhood, you have to have your end of your fence stair step down. Because the thinking is, and I agree with this, is if you have another resident living next door, if they were to back out of their driveway, it would be a hazard, and I agree with that, that would be. But this is a totally unusual and different circumstance. You can see the cement block retaining wall that the motel put up there. They have their little junky looking trailer sitting there. So people can't back out there. There is no hazard or safety issue to anyone. It's a huge, big, empty parking lot. And so anyway, I went round and round with the city. They said, well, the planning commission. So they said, well, go over and talk to the people that own the motel, because if it's their fence, it's legal. Oh, okay. So I go over there trying to be a big, nice neighbor and stuff, go over. No, she wasn't interested in that. And so then I went and I looked up some ordinances and found out that there's a ordinance, city ordinance, buffering ordinance, that when these places were built back in the 80s, the city should have enforced the buffering. It would have required, it's still required now, to have a fence or a hedge, trees of some nature of buffering between a commercial zone and a residential zone. So I thought, oh, great, that fits that. No, they said that has to be only for new development, according to the ordinance. I said, well, no, your ordinances don't say new, it only says development. And I looked up your definition of development, the city's development, it says new or existing. But no, they didn't want to go that route. So then, I believe it's Craig Collins, I'm not quite sure, came up with the idea that I should just go ahead and ask for a zoning change because then my fence would be legal. So you can see under all these different circumstances, my fence would be legal. And again, I agree with the city ordinance that if there was another resident, you know, with a driveway next door, I would totally agree with that. I could understand that. But it's, as you can see, it's not a detriment to the neighborhood. It's not a safety hazard, not a pedestrian hazard. You know, nobody can back out there. So, so anyway, I went to the planning, and of course, well, I guess for whatever reason, I didn't know at the time why they voted against it. Tried to find out, and then when I was supposed to appear here last month, which, by the way, thank you for allowing me to extend it due to my family health issues. Anyway, then that night when I got home from when I was supposed to attend the last meeting, I had a letter from the council that said the reason they had denied me was for spot zoning. And until that night, I'd never even heard of spot zoning. And somebody brought it up in the planning thing and said, well, that's illegal. It smacks of favoritism.
So Becky, your 5 minutes is up. If you want to wrap it up in
Okay.
couple seconds.
So anyway, I'll just read you my little brief thing here. I'm asking for the zoning change to allow the enjoyment of my reasonable financial return of my property and protect the property value. It does not infringe or deprive on any neighboring property rights, use, or enjoyment. In fact, it allows for the required buffering in Appendix C to protect the property from noise, provide visual privacy. The zone change will allow the buffering needed to provide a smooth transition between adjoining property and mitigate potential conflicts. It will conserve and protect the privacy and value of both properties, does not interfere with any public utilities, restrict pedestrian or vehicle access, or create any kind of hazard. It will not change the spirit of the law or impair the safety or the intended land use of the neighborhood. So I guess that's it. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Mrs. Bulfer?
Oh, thank you.
Councilman?
Is that,
Dallas, I can't. Can you lean into, yeah.
is that, I drove down there and I was trying to figure this out. Is that porn shop right over there?
Oh, yeah, that was the other reason, yeah. It's grandfathered in, so when I bought the property, the motel was empty. And then there's the porn shop over there. I tried for years when I lived down there to get rid of the porn shop somehow, get them to move it, but they're grandfathered in, so, you know, yeah, it sits there, and a lot of times.
Does that kind of block the view to the porn shop?
Yeah, yes, it does. And also the other problem I have is that semi-trucks will come, and they'll, especially in the winter, they'll come and they'll park their trucks there and leave them running on the street. So it creates a lot of noise, and so they're parked right there on the residential street.
I'd rather get rid of the porn shop than your
Well,
fence.
thank you. Let's do something about it. So, yeah, no, I've
are
tried
there
for
kids
25
living-
years to get rid of that place. And
Do kids live in your apartment? You have
Do kids? Varying times, I have children living in there. And at the time it was there, my oldest son, who was 2 at the time when we lived there, about 1990, yeah. So I used to go stand out there with my camera and watch people. A lot of them even knew who I was. I recognized them. I'd take their picture. But that didn't stop them from coming. But anyway, yeah, no, that's the other reason. The porn shop's right there. And, yeah, so, okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, Becky. So at this time, come on, I'm sorry, Mr. Steensland. Didn't see you there.
Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. I also drove by this apartment. And I relate it back to the last zoning change you had for spot zoning on Minnesota. And the logic of the planning board was spot zoning because a lot of the other stuff was rated C2, general business. So it appears from the sign or the graphic that the rest of it is C2 as well, right? So I don't see why this would be considered spot zoning. Tell the truth, the fence looks new. The apartments look really old. I assumed there was going to be something else done with them, but I don't think the spot zoning logic holds up in this one. I've complained about spot zoning a couple other times. In hindsight, I kind of regret it because both of the properties are still sitting vacant. They're just vacant, ugly lots in your neighborhood that don't help your price value of your house at all. So I'm starting to change my thinking on zoning. But in this case, I don't see where it would hurt to zone that C2.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Steensland? Thank you. Anybody else who would like to speak in favor of the zoning change? Okay. This time I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to changing the zoning from R3 to C2, please approach the lectern. Those who wish to oppose the change of the zoning from R3 to C2. All right. There being no others to speak for or against the issues involving the zone change, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a zone change for lots 1 through 4, Thomas D. Ross, number 1 addition, in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance to overturn the decision of Planning and Zoning Commission and grant the zone change.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Laird, seconded by Councilwoman Huckabee. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Johnson. Councilman Johnson and seconded by Councilwoman Huckabee. Discussion.
Your Honor. Whoever.
Go ahead. Councilman Walsh. We'll start there.
Thank you. The issue doesn't seem like this is that big of a topic because this is on the border of the existing C2 where that fence is legal. Are we talking inches? Or a person saying, let's say the motel said, no, it's my fence. Now is it legal? This is on the border of that line.
Do we know how far it is by chance? We don't. Okay. How far the fence is away from the property of the ranch motel? Or the property line, I guess.
Oh, it's not that far, I don't think, but.
Okay. Okay. Councilman Johnson.
I'm going to vote in favor of this because it just makes sense. But I just want to clarify, if we vote no, we're voting down the Planning and Zoning Commission, correct?
Correct.
Voting no is a yes for her. Okay. Yes.
Voting no is a vote for the fence to stay?
Because it's a resolution to.
Voting yes is to vote for the zone change.
Says a resolution to uphold the.
Am I correct in that?
No.
I'm correct, right? This was the nightmare I had last night with something like this. It's either that or I'm sitting here in my underwear. Those are the two nightmares I have right now.
As long as you're not on the fence in your underwear, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. So is that correct, Mr. Chambers?
If I may, Your
Yes,
Honor.
yeah.
If you wish to approve the zone change, which in effect overturns the P&Z Commission's rejection of it, you will vote to approve the ordinance for the zone change. If you want to uphold the P&Z Commission and shoot down the zone change, then you vote against the ordinance.
Vote against, okay.
It says, reason I ask, because it says here, resolution to uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision to deny the zone change. On the next.
That's on the script. That's if we,
I got
that's
you.
for the resolution, yeah.
My bad.
Yep.
We're good.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you. If we could get the pictures back up there, the one picture that shows the satellite view. if you look behind that, I don't know if we can enlarge that a lot, but if you look behind that, there's a bunch of what appear to be storage units. They're pretty trashy stuff. And then to the north of that is another lot that's just used for storage. Those two lots currently, if you look at the next thing showing the zoning, they are not C2. If you can kind of, in your mind's eye, look at those yellow lots right behind 806 through 807, 804, they are currently not zone C2, but they're obviously being used for a C2 purpose. They're storage. I would also like to note that C2 apartments are an approved item within C2. You can have a house in C2 and you can have apartments in C2. Another thing you might note on that same drawing, if you go over to my right, there is one lot between two red lots. If you go over on, I think it's Elma Street.
Yep, right there.
That's a classic case of spot zoning. However, the ones on South Washington are consistent with the areas around it and the areas along the highway. So I don't see any problem, since C2 is an approved use for apartments. Putting a fence up that hides some things you don't really want to look at when you're an apartment dweller, and on that basis, I'll support overturning what P&Z did.
Any other comments? Councilman Walsh.
Do we have any option in our zoning or our regulations on fences where we can shortcut all of this and grant an exception to the fence without changing zones, without going the next 3 weeks of doing this?
I'm getting ahead.
It seems so simple. We should just be able to say, all right, common sense says this fence isn't a big deal. We're going to grant an exception to it.
We don't have anything like that.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, one of the options that could be considered by the petitioner would be with regard to adjusting the height of the fence from the face of the building forward to the street, which would be North Washington Street. And so everything back from the front of the building would remain at 6 feet basically, and the fence moving forward from the front of the building would be tapered down to the appropriate height. And so that would forego the need to rezone the area in question, but it would require the fence owner to do that adjustment and make that accommodation for the height of the fence. And so that is an option that would not necessitate a rezone and still have the fence be in compliance.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. It's clear that that's not what she wants to do, and she would like that barrier going out. There is no driveways there. I'm just thinking maybe, I guess we can't do it here just because we don't have the mechanism built in. Maybe we should consider something like that, building it into our fence regulations where, based on situations, people don't have to change the entire use of the property in order to adjust where a fence may go. Councilman
Laird and then Councilman Hopkins.
I want to echo, agree, and add on to what Chris just said. Mr. Manager, I was going to ask you this question. In our pre-meeting in there, we were discussing the issue of the parking lot and the ordinance that requires it to be paved. And it was brought up, well, we can give this guy a permit so he can park here and doesn't have to be paved. Now, I really like that idea. So why can't we give her a permit to have that fence? And then you don't have to go through all this. And I kind of think, if I read your mind, Chris, that's more of what you were thinking, that would be easier to do, so we don't have to go through all this. Why can't she get a permit for her nice fence if we're going to give somebody else a permit to overcome an ordinance? This gives her a permit to overcome the ordinance, and it's over with tonight.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, the means by which a variance would be granted would be what the Planning Commission would have considered, I suppose, in regards to supporting this. But at this point, with regard to the Planning Commission's decision, That it does not appear to be an option, and is not available for us to be able to implement at this point in time.
So what do we have to do to have the ability to grant her a permit if we choose to do that for future issues? Do we need to pass a new ordinance that says the city council can grant permits? I mean, how do we grant this guy a permit to park on this dirt lot when the ordinance requires pavement? And it seems to me the same issue. Why does he get a permit and she can't get a permit for a similar kind of issue?
Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Councilman, that's because there is a permit that exists with respect to parking, but not in this circumstance, as I understand it. And so the mechanism just isn't available.
Unless we create one.
Yes, sir.
And
That's
we
right.
can create one, and we can also make sure that we change it to C2 zoning tonight, which is what I'm going to vote for, is to change the zoning. Can I add on that I want to get rid of the porn shop, too?
Your Honor, Mr. Councilman, I don't
You've been
think,
saying you don't want us to get sued.
I don't care about that suit, Charlie. I'll do that one for the city for free if we can get rid of the ordinance. And I guarantee you that I could probably do it.
This is the other nightmare I've had. So there's been 3 nightmares.
I may be able to help with this.
You want to say, Councilman Hopkins?
If I may, I might be able to help a little bit with the P&Z side of the issue. In order to get a variance for something like this under P&C, there are very specific requirements in state law, and they involve the use of your property, and it has to involve absolute financial gain. That's very hard to prove. And as a result of that, the Planning and Zoning Commission, in my recollection over the last 6 or 8 years of being involved with that group, has never given a variance because it's so difficult to prove that you have a financial loss due to non-use of your property. We're basically talking a fence here that it would have been built 6 inches to the south by the owner of the other property. We wouldn't be here today. So we're really talking about an area about 3 feet by about 12 feet. So it's about 36 square feet of fence. So I don't know that we need a variance, but she does have the right to ask to rezone her property because C2 does allow them to have apartments in that property. So I think by doing that, I think we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She would also have the option someday to revert back to R2 or R3.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Or build a 4-foot fence, which is what's allowed. I think we should step back and take a look at the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is to enforce the very rules that we or previous councils have put in place. That's their job. And they don't have the option of changing the rules or saying we don't like this rule, so we're not going to enforce this. Their job is to enforce the rules the way they're written. I think the argument about the buffer is a strong argument. And if that should be allowed, then we should change the ordinance to allow that. If there needs to be an option to buffer a C2 and an R3 from an R3 property. But that's not in the ordinance. And I think we should be a little more hesitant to overrule our Planning and Zoning Commission, because we have done this in other cases where a strong argument was made, or there was an emotional connection, I think, with the owner that was making the petition. And it sort of cuts the legs out from under the Planning and Zoning Commission when the council does this. And so I don't think we should do this lightly. I understand the argument about the buffering. I think that makes good sense, and it does seem it's kind of silly that if it was 2 feet to the south, it would be legal. But I think we should take pause before we overrule our Planning and Zoning Commission. And to me, rezoning a property to keep a fence 6 feet instead of 4 feet, you know, it's overkill. So I mean, I'm okay with council. Obviously, there's significant support for doing this. But we should realize that every time we do this, we disempower our Planning and Zoning Commission, and they come to the next meeting wondering, why are we doing this? Why are we even doing this? Somebody goes before council and overrules us.
Your Honor.
And so I think that is an issue. So anyway, I understand it's an unattractive view, and I guess 2 feet maybe makes a difference in some way, but I don't think we should take lightly the message that we give our Planning and Zoning Commission when we do this.
Councilman Johnson, then Hopkins, and then Laird.
I see where you're coming from, Councilman Powell, but I disagree because the Planning and Zoning Commission has no leeway. They can't deviate from the rules, but we can. And as part of the appeals process is that you can appeal to the city council for certain circumstances such as this one. And I feel like that the majority of the time we go along with the Planning and Zoning Commission, but there are times when it needs to be looked at by the city council, and we can make those changes. So I don't think we're cutting the legs out from under the Planning and Zoning Commission or anything like that. The majority of the time we go along with their rulings. The majority of the time, I think since I've been on council in 4 years, I've only seen us overturn maybe 4 cases. So,
Councilman Hopkins.
Yeah, just as a matter of the record, we're put in a position, we either support what the staff's original recommendation was, which was to proceed with the zone change, or we go against the P&Z Commission. But the staff's original recommendation was to proceed with the zone change.
Councilman Laird.
I think Charlie's right. I think Bob's right. And I think Sean's right. And I think she's right to do what she's doing. And I think we're doing the right thing to let her leave the fence up there. Now, just look at all this red tape we got going, Mr. Manager. I think we ought to pass an ordinance that says the city council has the authority to give somebody a permit when we bump into one of these kind of problems where it's just a big waste of time and money and effort, because you can come in and get your permit and you don't hurt anybody and everything's good. And I'm reading your mind, Councilman, down there, Mr. Ex-Police Chief, that's kind of what you were thinking. Let's start doing things like that on this council so we can streamline government and our people will be happier with us. Thank you.
Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just was about to speak, but Councilman Laird and Councilman Johnson said everything I needed to. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. Amendments. All right, please cast your vote.
Just clarification.
Oh, yes. Sorry, okay.
If I vote yes, does the fence stay if everybody else does?
Correct. So if we vote yes, first reading, and then we move forward, we proceed to the next part of it. So if we all vote yes, or the majority vote yes, we move forward to the next part. And then that'll be the first reading. Am I correct in that?
Tonight is the first.
Oh, this first reading tonight, right.
If this passes on first reading, then.
Right. Okay.
May I say one more?
Yes, Councilman.
If we are going to do this, I think we should take a look at that fencing ordinance and clarify the buffering option that an R3 property would have if they are adjacent to a C2. Had that been in place, we would not be having this discussion. And it seems reasonable that there should be some buffering option available to people in a situation like this without having to go through all of this.
Thank you. So is everybody clear on the vote? Okay.
Yes, she keeps the fence.
Yes. Correct. Please cast your vote.
We don't have it up there.
Oh, we got to change the screen. It's coming. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
does that mean that my amendment to get rid of the,
No, sir, that does not happen at the moment. All right, let me get to the... All right. If everybody go to page 6 on their script. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the zone change for the CPH addition from R2 to R3 to 4-unit residential. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, I have two this time. Exhibit 1 is correspondence from Liz Becker to Carter Napier on October 20th of this year, and Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication as published in the Star Tribune on October 13th of this year.
Thank you. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. The request in front of you this evening is with regard to a co-applicant approach, if you will, to the City Council to allow for a rezone from R2 to R3, as was just described, in order for the developer to develop multifamily housing not to exceed 4-unit residential buildings. This area in question is west of the Sunrise Shopping Center along Kaufman Avenue, and is currently held by CPH.
Okay, thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. As noted earlier, public hearing comments are allowed, limited to only 5 minutes, and of course, no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the zone change, please approach the lectern. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm in that process. I'm a developer. I've been doing the last 14 years developing from duplexing to fourplexes. And at this present time, with this area and the time of our economic, if that was really good times right now, we would build some very nice, beautiful homes. Because on the backside of that is Garden Creek. But right now, economically, it's not feasible. So we're basically looking at, you got the fire department to the north. It's a PUZ. I'm not planning, but planning and zoning. It was basically apartments, townhouses to the south. And so with the aspect that I'm building, with your permission, that I'm taking a 2-story townhouse effect and I'm reversing it because of the view of the units. This is the facing as if I'm doing the backside. This is the 2 units up front. I'm reversing it so the view will be of Garden Creek. Something that's never been done in Casper. Okay? So I'm not building anything more than a fourplex as per the laws. And with all the things I've been building for the last 14 years, approximately over 40 units, I'm here to get hopefully approval. Any questions?
Any questions? Councilman Morgan.
Thank you. Could I get your name?
Dennis Langdon.
Langdon.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Name and address.
Oh, yes, sorry, Mr. Langdon. Yeah.
Third Day Court, Casper, Wyoming, 82609. Sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Langdon? Okay, thank you so much. Anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? Anybody else? Okay, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving the zone change, please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in opposition. Okay, there being no others to speak for or against the issues involving the zone change, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a zone change for lots 1 through 8 of the CPH addition in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Laird. Discussion. Councilman.
Thank you. This is a good infill project, and we have strongly encouraged builders to build properties, infill in the city, especially when you've got good utilities available, good streets available. So I just think it's a good move. And I know it's a zone change, but.
Any further discussion? Amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Councilmember Huckabee abstaining, motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of ownership interest of retail liquor license number 7, Love Holdings LLC, doing business as C85 at the Branding Iron. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, continue this public hearing to a regular council meeting to be held on Tuesday, November 21st, 2017 at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Councilmember Huckabee abstaining, motion passes.
Please read the consent ordinances on third reading by title only.
Item 8A1, an ordinance amending Chapter 5 of the Casper Municipal Code pertaining to resort liquor licenses. Item 8A2, an ordinance approving a zone change for lots 4 through 10 in the south 40 feet of Lot 11, Block 22, Nelson's Addition subdivision in the city of Casper, Wyoming. Item 8A3, an ordinance amending Section 2.40.050 of the Casper Municipal Code pertaining to the Historic Preservation Program.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the consent ordinances just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Huckabee, seconded by Councilman Powell. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance granting an electric utility franchise and general utility easement to Pacificor, an Oregon corporation doing business as Rocky Mountain Power.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the consent ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Powell. Please cast your vote.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
If I may. So there's no discussion on the second reading.
That's correct. Please record the vote.
With council members Huckabee and Johnson voting nay, motion passes.
And Morgan.
And Morgan.
Noted, thank you.
Thank you. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 10A1, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a letter from Phillips 66 Pipeline LLC regarding city consent to transfer a pipeline license agreement from Phillips 66 Company to Phillips 66 LP or its subsidiaries. Item 10A2, a resolution authorizing an agreement with High Plains Construction, Inc. for the Jim Evans Truck Barn Surge Tank and Lift Station project. Item 10A3, a resolution authorizing change order number 1 with Andreen Hunt Construction, Inc. for the Casper Zone 3 Water System Improvements Project. Item 10A4, a resolution authorizing a contract between the Casper Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and Kimley Horn and Associates, Inc. for an Urban Center Strategic Parking Plan. Item 10A5, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the certified local government grant application for fiscal year 18 for funding a preservation plan. Item 10A6, a resolution rescinding resolution numbers 87-126, 03-256, and 12-256, and adopting revised historic preservation program rules and regulations for the city of Casper, Wyoming. Item 10A7, a resolution terminating a professional service agreement with the town of Evansville for building division services. Item 10A8, a resolution terminating a professional service agreement with the town of Bar None for building division services.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolution just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Any abstentions or nay votes?
No on 4.
Any other abstentions or nay votes? Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With the nay vote of on item 4 by Councilmember Walsh noted, motion passes.
Please read the consent minute action titles.
Item 11A1, approving the correction of a scrivener's error contained in the Natrona County Travel and Tourism Joint Powers Agreement Amendment Number 4. Item 11A2, authorizing the expenditure of budgeted revenue in the general fund for the current fiscal year to support community promotion events as outlined in staff's report dated November 1st, 2017, and authorizing the city manager to execute necessary agreements.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action items just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Morgan. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As we stated on the first page of the agenda, we do ask the following. Please state your name and address. Direct all questions and comments to me. No personal attacks or on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by council members, and presentations will be limited to 5 minutes. And of course, the duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor will time extensions be permitted. Good evening.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, Deborah Cheatham, 333 South Saconee. I'm back. Just to catch everybody up on the process, where we are in the process of my continuing action in an attempt to get an answer to some questions that I have regarding an executive session that occurred on April 14th of 2015. The order in the case of Cheatham versus City of Casper was entered by Daniel Forgey, Judge Forgey, on the 13th day of October. The judge said, petitioner's motion for summary judgment is granted. The action taken by the City Council in executive session on petitioner's complaint is null and void. The respondents shall publicly disclose any portion of the record of the executive session that reflects what action the council took at issue within 10 business days of the entry of this order. On October, well, this is following the judge's finding that the council did take action in the April 14, 2015 executive session in violation of the Wyoming Public Meetings Act. On the 17th of October, counsel for the City of Casper filed something called a notice of compliance, which, contrary to the court's order, said the council took no action at that executive session. The court said that council took an action during that meeting, that executive session. Court said that I'm entitled to know what that action was. So I'm here to renew my request to know what decision the council made during the April 14th, 2015 meeting, executive session, on my complaint, and to know what direction or guidance you gave to then city manager, Mr. Patterson.
So the action that the city council took at that executive session was no action.
And what direction or guidance? So you, in effect, dismissed my complaint?
No, it was no action taken. That's the action that was taken.
That was the decision that, the collective decision that you made?
As the council, correct.
Thank you. And what direction or guidance did you give to Mr. Patterson?
None that we had. We made no direction towards Mr. Patterson.
Finding by the court, based on the record in the matter, that there was direction or guidance given to Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Chambers.
Ms. Cheatham, as I understand it, it was in the order that your council actually got in discovery in that matter, the record of what was actually, what record there was of that executive session. I am not sure, I'm not familiar with whether there was a specific direction given to Mr. Patterson or not, but, the court basically took the roundabout way of saying taking no action is taking action. That action is invalid, so there was no action taken.
The judge's order, the transcript of his oral ruling from the bench says, and I quote, "The city also admitted in this case that the council had given direction and/or guidance to the city manager regarding petitioner's complaint." That's a finding of the court, and I'd like to know what that direction or guidance was, please.
I have a question. Is there
Mr. Chambers, do you want to talk first, or do you want me to go to? Go ahead, Mr. Laird.
the court based that finding on? I couldn't.
The
fi-
record,
What in the record said that they did anything? I didn't see anything in the record where he could have even made that finding.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Laird, I believe that's part of, as I understand it, sir, the answer lies in the request for admission that were submitted.
Can you point that out at all?
I don't have that information with me, sir.
Because I didn't see any requests for admissions or the answers. But it's always been my understanding that the action taken was, they said there's going to be no action here. That finding always made me wonder, because the judge would have to base a finding like that on some underlying fact that's somewhere in the record. Since there was no trial, I guess it would have to be in request for admissions or some sort of interrogatory, but I haven't seen that, so.
And I haven't received I don't have copies
Yeah.
to I don't have any of that information either, sir.
But we want to get your question answered properly. We just need to see the information.
Okay.
That the judge.
I can pursue getting those requests for admissions and the responses there too.
Give those to the city attorney.
I can have that done. Thank you very much.
Ms. Cheatham, I believe Mr. Walsh has something to say.
Yeah, I do, and it's the greatest frustration I ever created to any citizen in the city of Casper was not answering a question. Not returning a phone call, not answering a question. And I feel like that's what we're doing. If there is no answer to the question, how can we definitively say nothing happened? I can't answer it. I don't know what occurred. Let's say no action occurred and no direction was given. Are those fair? And can we tell Ms. Cheatham so that she doesn't have to keep coming and asking, and we give her no answer? How do we resolve this? It should be simple. I don't know.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Walsh, one of the problems in this case is that the city is required to keep minutes of executive sessions, and it did not do so in this case.
And if that's the case, we didn't, and we can't ever unring that bell, but what can we do to?
And that's why I'm pursuing this, is that I'm entitled to the answer to this question.
Understand. I would just like to be able to resolve the question.
I agree.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else who wish to speak? Good evening.
Good evening there. You look great as a fill-in. You know what? So good, I think you ought to just stay there for the next 2 terms.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Help me out
Lamont.
here a little
It's
bit.
good to see you
A
again.
young lady was sitting there tonight that calls herself the mayor. I'd be calling for resignation again tonight, okay? Carter? Tracy Lamont. How is Sam? Sam and Adrian? She's from Gillette as well. I thought maybe she was related. Welcome aboard. I'm kind of the outlaw around here. Tracy Lamont. Jesse, good to see you. We'll get Martin Luther King Boulevard named yet, okay? On 720, what address should I pick? I guess maybe I'll try 721 East 12th Street, or I could say WBI part-time, or the Wyoming State Hospital part-time. By the way, Dallas, good to see you. What a great addition here. Our buddy Jerry Spence would be proud of me tonight, wouldn't he?
Absolutely.
I've known him. He's been a family friend forever. Thank God I haven't had to call him. I'm going to try to keep this under 5, right?
You're at 4.5 right now, Tracy.
I've been a busy man. So Carter, Mr. Napier, will you pass these out to these folks up there? I've got a presentation here for you. I did have a full mouth of teeth before I started to get my hearing checked today. Chris will laugh. He's a good man. You know, he worked both sides of the street pretty well. You didn't let me down. I read the newspaper. You backed up Jimmy, okay? That's a good thing. Sean, you're the best. Walk both sides of the street better than anybody I know. Amanda, you best be reading your darn private messages next time, okay? Shame on you, okay? Now, I'm the best friend you have with your rape group because I was damn near raped too, okay? Now, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to save Kanae a lot of embarrassment. You know, I like the gal, but the moral compass is a little mixed up there. I'll leave it at that. You guys can all pass along to her, not to even bother to come back to the next meeting because she'll probably be let out of here in cuffs, okay? I'll leave it at that. Now, I'm going to tell you what my street name is. I'm also going to tell you that I'm about 3 years shy of a 25-year pin with the U.S. Marshal Service. I play crazy just about as well as Chris plays dumb, and Sean, and my good man, Mr. Schultz, back here in the back of the room. He won my vote of confidence. That's your man, you hire him, okay? Jimmy Wetzel works for me. He doesn't even know it, okay? He'll be getting his pay from the U.S. Marshal Service here before too long. He'll be landing on his 2 feet. I can tell you, the department, DCI, what a worthless organization. The FBI will be breaking the Chris Richardson case. And I've been told by my intel, which are the best in the business, that Chris is still alive. The bottom line here is her son is my godson, and he's my namesake. And I got to tell you, a billionaire is screwed with the wrong godfather. Read my lips, okay? I'll leave it at that. Dallas, you get it. You know where I'm coming from. I don't wear a badge, okay? I don't carry a gun. I got places in this special holster it's best for it. I'm pretty proud of this. Handmade for me. That's Woodhead nickels there, okay? Whatever you call them, buffalo nickels. But, you know, Art DeWork, bless his heart, another federal agent. Imagine that. He hooked me up a long time ago. But I was in there via Pat Craig. He was U.S. Attorney at that point in time. I've given everybody every indicator in the book. Pat knows, Bob knows I'm a pretty good promoter, right? You shook my head at that the last time. Put on a pretty good show this time, didn't I? I did myself. I don't have to play call a Hollywood actor, and it's all videotaped. So what you got there is a bill. Chris, I appreciate you saving my life that night over there on Waterford Street. But, you know, I had the left tooth out the last time. Now the right tooth fell out coming over here tonight. Stun grenade to the face, slapped it down, caught Mike Miller's carpet on fire. They threw me down on the ground next to the Berber carpet, brand new. We need to make arrangements to get Mike's carpet replaced too, Chris. That ball's in your court. You were supposed to do that. Plus get the roof fixed. His dogs were never the same, but I was thrown on that burning carpet. Thank God I didn't have a nylon shirt on. I was tasered over a dozen times that I'm aware of. You can tell I'm a little charged up here. I'm making it fast, so give me a little extra time, right? So we play by the rules, but I don't want to cause any further embarrassment. I call this place Hoopville when I post stuff. I don't want to embarrass my community. I was born in Riverton, Wyoming. Came over here. My dad took over Little Chicago for the Wilkerson family. And he worked both sides of the street. One of the most historic men you're ever going to meet. He's 94 years old. He cried when he drove by that gun range on the mountain. That gun range will be gone before it's over with. I'll guarantee you. Don't put another penny in that place. Not a penny. So, moving on. You'll see the 5-pointed star all over me. You better, learn what the 5-pointed star is. That's U.S. Marshal's Office. I'm not going to get into everything, but there's been a covert operation going on in this town for a long time. And I'm here breaking the news tonight.
So I'm going to give you 30 seconds, okay, to wrap up.
Finish that up. I'm known by Jonas Elliott-ness. Dallas will tell you what Jonas Will does. He saved Jonah, right? Yep, he sure did. I'm not crazy. The nice thing about telling the truth is you never have to remember anything. Mark Twain. okay? I'll be back. I'll be back. And I'll take my 5 minutes at a time, but I don't want to embarrass this community any further. But there's a lot of steps going to be shaken down. It's an embarrassment what's going on here, totally. This is a great body that's involved here. You got a great city manager. You were well liked. My hideout was Gillette, by the way, okay? Ed Collins and the group up there, they love me, okay? I want to put Casper back on the map like it's never been done before. You got the commitment from Steve Schultz right in the back of the room. You guys all saw me sit next to Jimmy Wetzel for months. We debriefed all the time. Charlie, you're a good guy. I'm on the right-hand side of the line. I'm in the line. Met with Tabby yesterday, okay? I have a full-time psychologist that watches me every day. So I'm not crazy. You listen to Keith Goodenough, too. He's my hero. Liz Becker, give her a pay raise, okay? Keep her on the pay rail. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Mr. Steensland.
Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. Miss Cheatham's questions. None of the current council was on board when any of this stuff she's asking about was taking place. Is that correct?
No.
There's a few of us.
There are a few of you?
I think there was 4 of us.
4? It seems like out of the 4, out of 9, somebody knows enough about something that you could get her some answers without having to go through 4 or 5 council sessions and just hedging around the issue. It seems like something had to have been said, and the public's entitled to know what it was. And I just wish you would get your heads together and get an answer. You know, I see a lot of things studied and studied and studied, and a lot of things never ever getting an answer. You know, Carter's encouraged the public to get involved in city, and nobody's going to get involved if we keep coming and we don't get any answers. Now, I've been told you don't give answers here, and I can live with that, but sometime down the road, you've got to come up with answers that the public brings in here. That's my only comments.
Thank you.
Good evening. Dale Zimmerly, 3035 Bel Air Drive. I was here at the last meeting and said a few things, brought up some issues. I was wrong about some. I was right about some. But what was wrong was my attitude about it. A scripture verse that struck me, Ephesians 4:2, says, "Conduct yourself with humility, gentleness, and patience." I don't score very high scores on any of those things. And I'm sorry. And that's what I came up here to say, is I'm sorry that from what was inside, what I was feeling when I said what I said. And I don't agree with everything that goes on, but I need to have some humility and some gentleness and some patience. And thank you for what you do.
I think we all do. Come on up. How's it going? Your name and address, please.
Jacobson, 455 Milton Avenue. I was just checking to see if any of you have checked on my bridge.
You're talking about the Verta James, the one that goes across from the park over that way. So, City Manager, do you want to maybe give an update on that at all?
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, our speaker, we are looking into that. As a matter of fact, we've had staff go out and review it more than once. We have a report coming together that would attest to its structural viability or not. That report is not complete yet. However, it's underway, and we anticipate being able to release it as soon as it's complete.
So, did you hear a little bit of that? So we're working on it, and unfortunately, as government is, it takes time to do things. It's not quite as fast as sometimes we'd like it to be, but we are working on that and keeping an eye on that, okay? So we are currently in on it right now. The staff is looking at those and making sure that it is safe, okay? Thank you for coming up, Maggie.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, may I make a comment?
Yes.
I went and walked the bridge myself. I walked the bridge, and it's scary. I agree with you. And I know that our city manager and Mr. Beamer are looking at it, and I think they're going to do a couple things to it that it won't be so scary, so that when you kids go to school, you'll feel a lot better about going over it. And we'll keep working on it, okay? And if you want a report, you come down anytime. All right.
Anyone else? Good evening, Mr. Goodenough.
Mr. Mayor, esteemed council people, Keith Goodenough, 333 South Saccone. Just to piggyback on what Citizen Maggie said, the other day I was driving underneath the McKinley Street overpass and there was a couple of chunks of concrete right in the lane of travel. So I called the manager's office and told him about that. I don't know if that's the railroad's deal or the city, but your bridge is not the only bridge falling apart. With regard to the comment by Councilman Morgan about the Second Amendment consent situation, I believe if you request the consent item to be taken off and changed to a discussion item the day before by noon, that's the procedure by which you can comment on those. It's not that second reading is never discussed, it's just you have to make a request to get it off the consent list in order to have the opportunity to do that. And I'd also like to speak in favor of the First Amendment with regard to the adult video bookstore. I think it was probably from the 70s. There was a number of court cases that is a legal and constitutionally protected type of activity and is no different than a biblical video store in terms of their right to exist. I think the city can have certain zones and zone them into certain areas of town, but to me it's similar to the argument that people are still arguing about marriage equality. The Supreme Court ruled on it, it's legal, and so there's a lot of people that still don't like that, but if we're going to listen to the Supreme Court, we should listen. I don't know if Councilman Huckabee will want to comment on her abstentions. I was kind of confused about why that was, because usually you abstain if you have a financial interest, but I don't know if she wants to say anything or not. And my last comment is that it would be nice if everybody would make sure to use their microphones, because some people don't do that very well, and so the masses around the world who are focused in on this meeting right now are not able to hear all the comments. So that's the extent of my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodenough.
I will say, though, that I believe in the First Amendment, but I don't have to like porn shops, and I don't like them, and I don't think Becky likes them, and so I'm happy she put up a fence so she didn't have to see it, and she has a right to do that now that we're going to change the ordinance. But thank you, Mr. Goodenough, for pointing that out.
Anybody else? Okay, let's go around the table and any announcements or things that happened. We were off last week, so.
Thanks, sir. A couple things going on. We've got Amoco Joint Powers Board meeting tomorrow. We've got Senior Service Advocates meeting tomorrow afternoon. And a couple meetings that we got going on. I think the 19th at 5 o'clock in the evening, we're going to turn the lights on in the park across the street from the hospital. Can't hear me yet? I'm sorry. We've got on the 19th, we've got the lights to be turned on across the street from the hospital. That's always a good thing to do. November 17th, there's a meeting that YDOT is going to put on, and it's a summit on the future of transportation in rural states. They're going to do this at the Ramcota. It's $35 a head, and there's going to be presentations in the afternoon from 2 to 5, and I think it's important that some of us attend that. I think it's going to be a good meeting, and I think we can learn something about it. That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Walsh.
Thank you. As everybody knows, we received the CPSM study on the police department. I look forward in the near future to having a conversation with council where we talk about that. If you recall, when we first decided to do that, we knew that there was going to be some repercussions, and that everybody at the time agreed that they would take careful consideration of those, not just get another study for the sake of finding out maybe some inadequacies and not doing anything about them, but taking some action. So I look forward to that conversation, and I hope that we follow the recommendations, that we can reasonably accommodate in that and move forward with it. The no vote on the parking study, I think that we have staff that's perfectly capable of telling us what the parking study can do, so that's why I voted no on that. And I know that most of that is grant funded, and it's a small section of city funding, but it's a small section that I know that our people could do for us, so that was my no vote. The other thing, a national event, the Texas shooting, and another horrible tragedy. But what came out of that, and what's very important that I think everybody knows, is the reason that that stopped was a citizen. It was an armed citizen. So, as we hear, take away the guns, let's try and legislate good behavior and proper conduct, it doesn't happen. In this case, what saved more people was a brave man, average guy with a weapon that went out and took some action. I think that's a huge message that people should take away from that. That guy's, the two of them, the driver and the person who went out and engaged the homicidal idiot that decided to shoot up a church. Those two guys that stopped that should be on every billboard in town and should be heralded as heroes. And so, thank God for those two neighbors that showed up and did what needed to be done.
Thank you. Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Zimley, I've never been offended by your remarks or your tone, and we appreciate your comments. And I think it's fine for people, appropriate for people to express the depths of their feelings at that podium when they feel strongly about something, and it's our job to listen to that and take it into account. Mr. Goodenough, I neglected 2 weeks ago to thank you for your remarks about the importance of this council strengthening its relationships with our local legislators. As everything that you said was appropriate, and we all need to do a better job of advancing Casper's interests as the legislators grapple with the nearly impossible task that they are currently faced with. We will have many opportunities to do so in the coming weeks and months, and we need to make use of every one of them. So I hope we will all work collectively on that. I did just want to clarify something. There was an article about our community promotion spending that made it seem as though we were giving money to nonprofits. And the reasoning behind that relatively small expenditure wasn't really explained. The whole concept of community promotions is that an organization is involved in an activity that is bringing economic benefit to our community. And that is measured in terms of room stays and dollars spent in our community because of those events, which may not occur were the city not to give discounted rates on its use of its facilities or in-kind services. There was absolutely no cash provided out of our budget, and I can imagine how some people would say, well, they're in a budget crunch, why are they giving money to the nonprofits? That's not what happened. We basically made a decision that this relatively small amount of money will bring economic activity to our community and essentially pay for itself and then some. So, and DDA meets tomorrow. I will miss the work session next week, and I regret that because we have some important things on the agenda. And I hope our mayor is handling her circumstances as well as she can. I know it's difficult. Thank you.
Sorry, Councilwoman Huckabee.
I waited to be called on for once. Tracy, I'm glad you're doing okay. And the reason that I shut off my personal messages on my personal page is because I was getting inappropriate messages, but you can always contact me through my political page. Okay. I happen to agree with Dennis on the transparency of that meeting. Let's just talk about what happened. If we made a mistake, we made a mistake. And let's not take any more time. Dale, I also appreciate you coming up here. I've never been offended by you. I know that you and I don't always see eye to eye, but I respect you. And I think that, you know, your presence is a calming effect on a lot of people. Maggie, thanks for showing interest in something that is important to you. I appreciate when kids come up here. As far as my abstentions, there's a reason for that. The first one pertaining to a nature of a personal relationship with Mr. Langdon, and I've made a conscientious choice to vote in abstention in all matters involving Cersei Holdings. Last week I attended the Domestic Violence Prevention Coalition meeting and the Hogadon grand opening, which was really fun, albeit very muddy. And upcoming is the Leisure Services Board on Thursday. Next week I will also be attending a 2.5-day conference for violence and prevention response that's being put on by the coalition. That's here in Casper. And Katie, thank you very much for your article in Sunday's paper. You did a very nice job, and I appreciate your efforts for that.
Thank you. Councilman Laird.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerly, you can come anytime and speak anytime you want. So can you, Mr. Goodenough. So can you, Tracy. I always appreciate people coming in and speaking to the council, and I can hear the real deal about Casper, Wyoming. I think that the police department, I think we should build a new police station for the police department once you find the money after you balance the budget, Mr. Manager. Ms. Cheatham, I'm kind of frustrated with this whole deal too, but it's my understanding that everything that happened, the ponds got fixed, whatever happened to get the ponds polluted, they fixed the ponds. They had a meeting and they decided that everything had been done and they took no action. That's what I understand happened, although I wasn't there. I really don't like speaking for the people that were there. And I don't know what else there is to say. I wish I could say it. So that's what I know about it. Maggie, you can come down anytime you want to and tell us about that bridge. And we hope that it's not going to be scary for kids to go across there. How the manager and Mr. Beamer fix that, I'm sure they'll come up with a good way of doing that. We're going to, I think it goes out, when does it go out on the website to give notice that we're taking applications for the city attorney's job? Is that coming up shortly, or where is that? Anyway, that just so you all know, this gentleman down in front is the acting city attorney. He's a great city attorney. I hope he applies for the city attorney's job. And then with our courts, one of the things I'd like to see the council do, we have part-time judges right now, and they can practice law on the side. Like, for instance, they can hear criminal cases, but they also, because they're part-time, they can go out and they can defend criminals in other courts. And I don't like that. I want to change that, if the council sees fit on a vote, to where we have a full-time judge that just addresses the city's matters and puts his or her time full-time into our court. I think we're a big enough city and we're a big enough court that that's required. Dennis, appreciate you going out and looking this stuff over. So one of these days, are you going to run for the council? Okay. We have a good city, and I think everybody on this council wants to have the best police department, the best city attorney's office, the best courts, the best city council. We got really good people on this city council, and they're careful and they want to look into issues, I can assure you. And ladies that didn't speak down there in the front row, thanks for coming. And I hope we get the issue straightened out downtown that's developed. And it's all, it's all about parking and whether employees should park on Second Street and how often should you let a food truck in there. And the whole thing really is everybody being neighborly. And of course, I hope that, I would like to see all of the people downtown get along and solve their own problem, really. And I know you're all good people and you can do that if that gets going. Don't you think so, Mr. Manager? The other alternative is that we would have to come up with an ordinance of some sort, and I think we have enough ordinances. Thank you.
That was really, spot on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. You're getting gray. You have more gray hair than when I got appointed.
Yes.
And Bob has plenty more gray hair since I've been appointed, and the chief's lost his hair since I've been appointed. Yeah, and yours turned blue. And Jesse's over there. He's the best dresser in the place. And then
I should have kept my mouth
sheriff's
quiet.
deputy here, he doesn't say much. He just absorbs things.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Johnson.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Going down the line here.
Do I have time to use the restroom?
It's short and sweet. Thanks for the apology, Mr. Zimmerly. I don't think it was needed. I'm glad to know how you feel about, for instance, the golf course or CADA and some of those concerns that you had brought up during the last council meeting. We're tough. Got tough skin up here. Ms. Jacobson, thanks for coming up here. But to answer your question, unfortunately, no, I have not. I need to get out there, and when I do, I will put some pictures on my councilman page to try to let the public know what you're seeing and what your concerns are. So next time I'm driving by it, I'm stopping as soon as I see it. And thanks for coming up here to speak. I hosted a downtown, listening session regarding development, parking, and other issues. I also wanted to hopefully hear some feedback regarding the Rocky Mountain Power Agreement. I didn't get the Rocky Mountain Power Agreement side, but I did understand a lot of issues that are taking place, and sometimes you don't always get that chance to see it in an email. So it always takes more context behind that, and I think that was definitely given to me during that meeting. So I appreciate those that were there. It was great to hear what's going on downtown and also see what kind of void that was put in place after the eclipse. So there's so much planning, everybody getting together, and leading up to the eclipse with Anna Wilcox, and there's certainly a void now that she's gone. So it's how do we fill that? So I have a couple of other lunches and a late night thing this week with some other downtown stakeholders that are there, and I'll be gone next week. But after that, hopefully I'll get a few more groups involved too. But I'm working on it, and I'm happy to. So thank you for coming down and talking to me. I appreciate it, and it's always important to hear from my constituents and other people in our community. I voted no against the Rocky Mountain Power Agreement, the franchise fee. Doing some research around town, around the state. Evansville, I think, is a good example. Sometimes when you increase that fee for a specific purpose, or a tax, for example, you put that in place, government or whatever institution, body, gets really comfortable with that. And for example, whether it's going from 3% to 3.5% for a specific project, it stays at that point. So to increase the Rocky Mountain Power Agreement to 7%, the highest in the state, at what point or what future council will try to retract that and come down to maybe a reasonable level? Maybe it's not reasonable 10 years from now or even 5 years from now. So I'm glad we're taking a hard stance and trying to balance our budget. It's something that hasn't quite been done to the fullest extent, especially during this mineral tax revenue shortfall. So I'm glad we're looking at all options. I just feel that there are certainly other options still on the table before we implement a fee that could be in place for 20 plus years, and that's why I'm voting no on that particular agreement. And 1 cent tax is coming up for renewal for another 4 years, and at that point maybe council can get together and try to realize what percentage we could possibly allocate that $12 to $14 million year over year to help us with certain amenities that the city of Casper already enjoys, and they want that to keep in place. And they are already realizing that 1%. So if we're able to just use some of those funds towards those amenities that we offer here in the city of Casper, that's unlike other places across the country for that matter, I think it's worth looking at. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple things that I just wanted to go over quickly. Council members don't miss too often, and when they do, they have very good reasons to miss. Mayor Humphreys had one of the people that owns her company had passed away, and so she was not able to be here tonight because of that, and having to deal with that issue that's effective. So keep her and her staff and the company in your prayers as they kind of deal through this difficult time. So just wanted to, not to justify Mayor Humphreys' absence as much, but as much to know that we're a community and that we need to be a community, and to know that you can keep her in your thoughts and prayers, and her community as well. Maggie, thanks for coming up. She's gone. Where did she go? Maggie? I coached Maggie in basketball last year, so I kind of know Maggie. Maggie, great job. Keep it up. Keep going out there and doing those types of stuff, as everybody had said. Really appreciate that, okay. I had the opportunity to speak to 5 political science classes last week, all about city issues, and there was a part of an assignment that they'll be getting together to actually try to come up with solutions to our financial issues. And so I wanted to also thank the city staff for helping me get my talking points together. I know that they got that together for me, and Carter and Jolene, you guys, thank you so much and Renee for helping me get my talking points in order for that. It was very successful. Dale, as always, we appreciate you guys coming up here, and we appreciate your gentle spirit. There's never a bad thing about that, and the part of it is that I think we tend to get curled up when people come up and it's different, and I've been very guilty of doing that, and I've learned, I think, over the years being on council, that I've got to learn to back down a little bit and listen to people's frustrations and listen to those types of things. So we understand where you're coming from, and we appreciate you guys always being here, being a part of that. So no need to apologize for any of those things. As far as transparency, we do want transparency, and we're working on that. It's not fast, and I know we've not always seen eye to eye on a lot of things, but our hope and our work is that we try to get there. And government needs to be transparent. Government needs to work for people and for the people, and that's our hope and our goal. And if it doesn't, then government fails, I think, and that's our hope. It's always an honor to be able to listen to citizens come up here and complain or to say whatever it is. The hope is that we can make a difference in that, and that's our hope, that we can make a difference. We're not always going to be perfect doing it, but I think we can if we work together. So with that, that's all I have. Anybody else? Oh, man, why did I say that?
Well, you gave me the deal, but I had good news. I had a very important legislator tell me that he thinks the money's in place to build the new state building downtown. And that sounded really good to me. I know it's all subject to some politics, but that's what we were told. And I really like to hear that, Carter, because that'd be a great deal for the downtown, that building, among other things that we're thinking about doing. So great. I wanted to share that, and I just forgot about it.
Councilwoman Huckabee.
I forgot to mention I won't be here next week. It's my daughter's birthday, and to me that's very important, so
okay.
I won't be here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, with nothing else, the next meeting of City Council will be a work session, which is going to be held at 4:30 next Tuesday, November 14th, 2017, in the council meeting room, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m., which is Tuesday, November 21st, 2017, in the council chambers. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss litigation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. What's that?